Hi Booklovers, welcome back to my channel. Last year I did a video where I read about 5 contemporary romances all with yellow colored covers, and this year I kind of wanted to do another video like that, but this time reading contemporary romances with blue covers. Of the 5 books that I read, 2 of them were older releases like backlist books, one of them just came out this month in April, and the last 2 books are books that aren't even out yet. They're out later in May, so I will leave those towards the end of the video, so if anyone wants to skip hearing about them, you can. But I won't talk about spoilers or anything, so you should be fine if you just want like a general review. Before I get into my 5 blue romances though, I do want to share the sponsor for today's video. A big thank you to Aura Frames for sponsoring today's video. Aura Frames are some of the most popular gifts for birthdays, for Mother's Day, which is around the corner, for anniversaries, holidays, or anyone in your family. It's a digital photo frame that allows you to preload photos and add your own personal note or personal video message, which makes for the perfect gift. Even Oprah recommends it. It was chosen as one of Oprah's favorite things 3 years in a row. Each frame comes in its own beautiful gift box, so no wrapping required. You can upload over 10,000 photos or videos. There's no fee or subscription involved, and you can also invite as many people as you'd like to a single frame so they can add their own photos and videos to this frame. It's super easy to use. There's this little touch screen that allows you to swipe through photos really quickly. You can also play videos, play sounds in the videos. Just pick and upload any photos or videos you want straight from the Aura app on your phone or a computer. I love this frame. I think it's so cute and perfect. I uploaded a bunch of family photos, family dinner photos, and about 80% of the photos that I uploaded, they are of just my dog. Use my code Lacey to take up to $40 off this frame while supplies last, or you can use my code to take $20 off on best-selling Aura frames. Last year, these Aura frames completely sold out, so don't wait. You can use the link in my description to order one for yourself or for your loved one. A big thank you again to Aura Frames for sponsoring today's video. Back to my blue contemporary romances. These are the 5 books that I chose to read. My 5 blue books are Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, Act Your Age Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, Heart and Soul by Frederick, Something Wilder by Christina and Booklovers by Emily Henry. The first book that I wanted to talk about is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, which is the book that just came out. It's the newest release on my list. It just came out this month in April, and I've been looking forward to read it because I have really enjoyed all of Abby Jimenez's books so far. I like her writing, I like her stories, and her books have all been at least 4 stars or higher for me, except for this one. This is the first time I'm giving less than 4 stars for Abby Jimenez, which was a little disappointing. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It was a very okay read for me, sadly, because I just never really fell in love with our main characters, especially with this heroine, and even the hero didn't make that much of an impression on me. So the whole Part of Your World thing, the Little Mermaid connection, is basically that our heroine Alexis, she comes from a very prestigious line of Montgomery doctors. She's had expectations placed on her entire life, especially by her very overbearing father. She has to become a doctor and she has to marry well, and her hero Daniel is from a completely different world. He doesn't come from money, he doesn't come from any sort of prestigious family line like Alexis does. He comes from a small town, from a small and welcoming family. He's a carpenter, and he's definitely someone who Alexis's parents would not approve of. These two are total opposites, and it doesn't help that Alexis's parents are super snobby and think that Daniel is just not good enough for them. The romance is pretty simple. Like, Alexis and Daniel, they meet for the first time at this bar and they instantly click and connect. They have this one-night stand that eventually leads to something more. But the thing is, Alexis is very firmly against this something more. She's very adamant that their relationship can be nothing more than a fling because of her family, but it's super obvious that both of them are clearly catching feelings. And all the while she's been falling in love with Daniel, she's also come to realize that she's been a part of this cycle of abuse, of emotional abuse, by her ex-boyfriend and by her father. Her ex, who is this renowned doctor that her parents really want her to marry, even though he cheated on her, he became the kind of man who would emotionally abuse Alexis, like always demean her and put her down. Alexis's father is also the same kind of abuser, and she's trying to fight her way out of this cycle of abuse. So there's a lot going on in this book outside of the romance, and I did appreciate the message behind it, but I just sadly never fell in love with Alexis or Daniel. Like, their characters were just okay for me. Alexis does get very frustrating, even if it's understandable, and Daniel was just a little bit too perfect. So they were sweet and cute together, but I just could not get into the romance. I never really got invested in it, and plus it got really overshadowed by all of the other stuff going on, all of the outside plots. I mean, I did appreciate that we get a cute little baby goat in the story, unlike the typical pet dog in Abby Jimenez's books, but even that wasn't enough to make me love this one. I really wish I could have enjoyed it more, like the way that I enjoy the author's previous books, but this one is sadly my least favorite of hers so far. I then finally read Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is the third and final book in her Brown Sister series, which I love. I've adored every book in the series, and this one was no different. I give it 4 stars. It was so wonderful to read. We get Eve, who is our final sister, the youngest sister. I will say it's not my top favorite of the 3 books. That one still belongs to Chloe Brown, but it's still another amazing read. It's just so cute and lovely, which is pretty much Talia Hibbert's brand. So Eve is our flighty sister, the one who can never settle on a job and relies on her parents to support her. She is a certified hot mess, and her parents have finally had enough and issued her an ultimatum. She has to stick to a job for at least 1 year, she has to find her own place, or she gets no more money from her parents. She goes into an interview at a bed and breakfast, which our hero Jacob owns. Both Jacob and Eve are autistic characters, so if you're looking for a romance with autistic representation, I highly recommend this one. Their first meeting at this interview went not that great, and it went even worse when after the interview, Eve accidentally runs Jacob over with her car. It's terrible, but the scene where Eve hits Jacob with his car was legitimately so funny. Like, I laughed out loud when I read that part. After that though, Jacob does eventually hire Eve at the bread and breakfast, and they're just so freaking cute together. The opposites attract aspect was so perfect and so fabulous. Like, Eve is this messy, chaotic person, and Jacob is this quiet, grumpy guy who just wants to be left alone. But when you put the two of them together, all this sass and banter is fantastic to read, and you can just feel how these two bring the best out of each other whenever they're together. There is a little drama going on with Eve not telling Jacob about the ultimatum from her parents, so even though Eve and Jacob are super cute together, you're kind of always waiting for that shoe to drop. Still, it's such a feel-good and cozy read. Like, Talia Hibbert is one of the few authors who actually have illustrated covers, who can deliver an actual rom-com. Her books are genuinely funny and cute, and she doesn't hold back with her steam. It's surprisingly a combination that's really hard to come by these days. Like, there's only a few authors that I know who have illustrated covers, who actually, you know, write rom-coms and aren't fade to black. But thankfully, Talia Hibbert is here for us with her adorable books. My other blue cover is not exactly a romance. It's Heart and Soul by Frederick. I mean, I knew going into it that it wasn't going to be a romance, that there wasn't going to be a happily ever after, at least not until maybe the second book. But I still have been wanting to read this one because of the author and because of the idea of the story. And honestly, if you go into it knowing it's women's fiction and not romance, your expectations will adjust and you will hopefully enjoy it better. Still, I wouldn't say that I love this one, but I didn't hate it either. I give it 3 stars. The heroine Hara is Korean American and an adoptee. She was adopted into a white family and into a very white neighborhood, so she's always felt a little left out. Like, growing up and even as an adult, she never felt like she fit in anywhere. Not with her own family, who she does love, or at least she does love her mom, her adopted mom. Not with the other white kids at school, and not even with Koreans. So Hara decides to finally take a chance to fly out to South Korea after the death of her adopted father, who she wasn't really close with. She goes to Seoul to track her father through an email that he sent, and it's at the airport where she lands that she meets a boy named Yoo-jun. He's the love interest, and I think he's famous in some way, but he is very clearly into Hara even from their very first meeting. But the focus of the story isn't the romance, it's on Hara's journey in trying to find her family, her biological family, and find a place to belong. I will say the reveal at the end, it was a little strange, like the relationship between Hara and Yoo-jun. That reveal, I was really confused for a bit, like I didn't know what was going on. So the reveal at the end is strange, and obviously this being not a romance, Yoo-jun and Hara do not end up together at the end, or more like it's just left very, very open-ended. The story itself wasn't the worst, but Hara was just all over the place for me. Like, one moment I was feeling for this girl, like the way she struggled growing up, and even in present day I really felt for her, but then she goes and does something a little annoying, so I got frustrated with her. I did genuinely definitely tried to enjoy this one, but it just wasn't all that amazing. But it is really interesting how the marketing for this book just ruined it for a lot of people. I personally feel like it should have been published with Berkley Publishing in general and not with Berkley Romance. And the author and publisher definitely should have said it was a duet from the very beginning. Unless maybe it was supposed to be a standalone and then they saw that people were not happy about this, not happy about the ending, and then they decided to write another book. It just goes to show how expectations can really make or break a book, and sadly they just kind of broke this one. Like the romance marketing, the hopeful romance in the blurb, it really did this book no favors. And my last two blue books, these two have not released yet, but I got to read them a little early, and they're both by very, very popular authors. This one is Something Wilder by Christina Lauren. I will admit I was a little scared to read this one because I was so worried there wouldn't be enough romance for me, because Christina Lauren has more turns towards women's fiction than actually romance in the past few years, and I've also kind of given up on this author duo writing steam ever again. But my close friend read this one and ended up really loving it, and since I trust her and we basically have the same taste in books and I do love second chance romances, I knew I would have to read this one, and I'm so glad I did because I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I love the second chance romance, and I also really enjoyed the treasure hunting part. Honestly, this book gave me Love in Other Words vibes, which is one of my favorite Christina Lauren books and one of my top favorite second chance romance books ever. So that's probably why I enjoyed Something Wilder so much, because it reminded me of Love in Other Words, just without the whole like past and present chapters. So if you don't like books where the chapters switch back and forth between past and present, you will like Something Wilder because it doesn't have that. But I had a ton of fun reading Lily and Leo's romance. These two met a decade ago on Lily's family's ranch. They fell in love instantly, but then circumstances tore them apart and made both of them believe that the other didn't want to be with them anymore. Now Lily runs her own treasure hunting tour out in the Wild West. She's the daughter of a famous treasure hunter, and this is basically the only way that she's been able to make money to support herself, and it's also the only way she's been able to save up money to buy back her horse ranch. Leo, our hero, he goes on this bro trip every year with his best friends, and this year his best friends take him to Lily's retreat, which he had no idea about. So this is our first time reuniting in literally 10 years, and Lily is not happy to see him. She thinks that he abandoned her 10 years ago and basically never looked back, but there's still so much feeling and longing between them, especially on Leo's part, which I love to see. You can really feel how much these two still love each other so much even after so many years. But I personally would have loved some more flashbacks of when Lily and Leo first fell in love. Like, I feel like if we got more flashbacks of that, if we got that feeling of them first falling in love with each other, that would have made the romance even more well-rounded. But the treasure hunting aspect was great, like the whole retreat thing. I kind of love naturey books that make me want to be a naturey person, even though I'm not and never will be. Like, sometimes these naturey and outdoorsy books are written so well that they make me want to go out, even though I'm the least naturey person ever. So that part was great. They go on this whole treasure hunting thing in the middle of a desert. They're trying to track down Butch Cassidy's long lost treasure, and there is some surprising suspense thrown in here that I didn't expect. So it does get really exciting and you're kind of on the edge of your seat trying to figure out what's gonna happen next. And the last few chapters had my heart feeling so full and so happy. I mean, I will still complain that there wasn't enough steam. It's not Fade to Black, but it's also nothing like, you know, the Beautiful Bastard books. It was just a very flowery and metaphorical kind of steam, which, I mean, okay, fine, whatever. Still, I do highly recommend this one. I really enjoyed it, and I do highly recommend it, especially if you loved Love in Other Words. And the final book that I read in my blue covers list is Booklovers by Emily Henry. I've basically been the biggest Emily Henry fangirl ever since Beach Read came out. That one was a favorite of 2020, and then People We Meet on Vacation was a favorite of 2021. And this one, even though it wasn't like a perfect 5-star read, it still is another winner. I gave it 4 stars. So Booklovers is Emily Henry's third adult romance. I was surprised I didn't fully love it and give it 5 stars, but it's still a really good read. And I feel like I'm probably in the minority for this because it seems like a lot of people love this one the most from her. And even though it's not my favorite, I still do love Emily Henry and her writing and her sense of humor. If you love books that are all about books, Booklovers is for you. While I was reading this one, it really felt like a love letter from Emily Henry to books, to publishing, to just reading. Like, you can feel the love for books from the characters, from the writing, and it was just really lovely to read. So Nora, the heroine, is a literary agent, and Charlie, the hero, is a book editor. They're sort of enemies. Like the first time that they ever met, they were both rude to each other, so now they don't really get along. Now though, they coincidentally bump into each other in the small town of Sunshine Falls in North Carolina when they're both away from New York City. Charlie is there because of his family, and Nora is there because her sister dragged her out for a little sister's trip. This is when Charlie and Nora grow closer to each other, and they grow even closer when they have to work together because Charlie becomes the book editor for Nora's biggest client, biggest author. The romance is the absolute sweetest. Like, Nora and Charlie were great. They had me feeling all the feels. Their banter and wit was perfection, and I love that you can just see Charlie falling so hard for Nora even though we never get his point of view. It does get pretty emotional though with Nora dealing with this growing gap between her and her sister, who is her best friend. Like, there's something clearly wrong going on with Nora's sister, and she's trying to figure out what it is. Nora's also really unsure about her job, like whether she wants to be a literary agent, and it's just really relatable and written so well. I mean, I didn't expect anything less from Emily Henry, but I just wasn't quite as in love with this romance as I was with Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation. For those books, I fell instantly in love with them. I was obsessed with those books and those romances, but this one felt more like a slow burn, kind of falling in love with the romance. Like, the romance itself isn't slow burn, it was my love for the romance that was slow burn. But if you love Emily Henry, I have no doubt that you'll end up loving Booklovers too. Charlie is a total sweetheart. Like, the way that he would do anything for Nora, killed me. So this is definitely an upcoming release to get excited about. And that is it for my blue contemporary romance reads. I'm not sure which color I want to do for next year, but if you have any suggestions, let me know. And of course, if you've read any of these books, feel free to share your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!